Welcome to Min&Jean TV.
You keep saying concerned. We're not concerned.
So we talked about democratic values. We talked about the balance between privacy and public health, as you've articulated there. I'd like to speak now about the dictatorship to the north. First of all, in the past weeks, a lot of speculation about leader Kim Jong-un's health recently. Your intelligence has said that there were no signs that he had surgery. How sick was he, or is he?
Well, you know, our intelligence is robust, and we share and analyze a great deal together with our ally, the United States. And all indications we have is that there is no unusual activity, whether it's his health or the society as a whole. Obviously, there's a limitation because it's a closed society. Information is very difficult to garner, but to the extent that we know, we don't detect any unusual developments.
It's a closed society that your administration has been making major efforts to crack open. Since President Moon took office in 2017, your government has stressed improving ties with the North in the hopes of promoting peace on the peninsula. But you've been criticized over not putting human rights high enough up on the agenda. For example, you dropped the traditional co-sponsoring of a resolution condemning North Korea's horrific rights record at the UN General Assembly this past fall. President Moon also did not bring up human rights in a meeting with Kim Jong-un last year. Have you sacrificed calls to improve human rights in order to keep the dialogue going?
I think keeping the dialogue going is extremely important if we are going to find a peaceful resolution with the North Korean nuclear and missiles issue and getting us on track towards creating lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. Human rights is a very big issue when it comes to North Korea, and we support the international efforts, the UN efforts in this regard. Obviously, to keep the engagement going, we have to balance everything, and it's a decision given all the consideration, the judgments that we make. It's not that we don't consider a human rights issue of North Korea any less, but in the tactics and the strategy in promoting the engagement with North Korea has to weigh all factors and proceed.
But there's a critical mass of criticism, and I'd just like to highlight a couple of them because the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in North Korea has said the following: integrating fundamental human rights into the current negotiations is crucial for the sustainability of any agreement for denuclearization and peace on the Korean Peninsula and beyond. Can you really wait to talk tough on human rights with North Korea? I mean, doesn't that undermine the legitimacy of your efforts?
I don't think so. I think human rights has a place, and I think the human rights mechanisms of the United States, the United Nations, plays a very important role in keeping the engagement on that track. But there's another track to engagement with North Korea, which is the peace and security track. And at some point, they have to come together. But at this time, our judgment is that the security track has to take precedence.
You've also been heavily criticized as you are prioritizing that security track of turning a blind eye in another way. Back in November, your country deported 2 fishermen accused of murder back to North Korea. The UN, again, expressing deep concern that, quote, the decision was made potentially without due process, and that the 2 men are at risk of serious human rights violations upon return. And they just highlight a couple, including enforced disappearance, arbitrary execution, torture, ill treatment, trials that do not conform to international fair trial standards. They say that your government could have failed to uphold international human rights obligations itself. Do you regret that deportation decision?
No, not at all. I think we made the best decision under the circumstances, and given that there was no genuineness to the 2 men's desire to come to this part of the peninsula, and given that
how did you determine
they themselves have we have a process run by our National Security Office, and all the ministries are involved, and the collective decision was that they pose a danger to our society, and so therefore the decision was made.
Doesn't it really come down to the fact that you're afraid that any position that you take on human rights will simply blow up talks with the North?
We are not afraid. We are very actively seeking the engagement, taking all elements into consideration. But I think even the human rights mechanisms would say that it is very important to keep that engagement going.
Okay. I'd also like to talk about the circumstances currently in the North. I mean, we highlighted a number of the dire circumstances when it came to the case of those two fishermen. We also have signs of deterioration there. The country has had a poor harvest season. Now with coronavirus, there are destabilizing factors, both economically, potentially on the health front as well. How concerned are you that the North, with its strongman policy, will lash out and deflect from the interior issues that it has in the country?
Well, we watch very carefully. I think, the official position is that there is no case of coronavirus, but they report to the WHO of quarantining people and testing. So we take their official position with a lot of grain of salt. The health structure there is extremely weak. We have offered to collaborate on this front. We have not received a response yet, but I would be cautious as to make sweeping judgments about what the situation there overall is.
But are you preparing for the potential of increased provocations?
They have provoked. There has been a series of short-range launches, and these are certainly unhelpful, and we have urged them to stop this at a time when the whole world is trying to come to grips with this very unprecedented health crisis. But we watch very closely, and we are prepared, and I think based upon our very robust defense posture and readiness, based upon our strong U.S. ROK security alliance.
Min&Jean TV.